Today I'm going to go over the AP Statistics exam. This is just going to be a quick overview of what's on the exam and what I think you need to do to prepare for the exam. I was an AP student not that long ago, so I have, I think, pretty relevant information when it comes to this sort of thing. A lot of the people writing these articles on what you need to do to prepare for AP exams were taking them in the 90s or earlier, or never took them at all. I was a student sitting in your shoes, preparing for the exam just a couple of years ago. My information, I think, is going to be a lot more relevant, and I think you're going to find it a lot more helpful. So I'm going to go over the exam and then also give my 2 cents as to what I think you should be doing to prepare. So first, why even bother? Why take the exam at all? The reason, you've heard it before, I'm sure. It's the most relevant reason. Really, the only reason that matters is the college credit. If you take this class in college, it's going to cost a lot more. This exam is $100 usually. If that's a problem, you can get a fee waiver. It's going to be a lot cheaper to do it now. Also, if you do it now and you screw up, that's not nearly as big a deal as you failing the class in college. It's good to get it out of the way. It's also going to be good for college admissions. It shows that you're up for a challenging course load, and this is a challenging exam. If you can do well on that, it shows that you can exceed in a rigorous academic course. The other reason to take this exam is that you're demonstrating skill in a useful subject area. If you think you want to do political science, statistics is going to be relevant for that. Natural science, statistics is going to be relevant for it. Math, obviously, statistics is going to be relevant. Whatever you want to do, this subject material is going to apply, and so it's important that you have a good understanding of it. And by taking the exam, you can demonstrate that you have skill in this subject area. So for the exam structure, it's 2 sections, both an hour and 30 minutes. Multiple choice is 40 multiple choice questions. It's 5 answer choices, so that's A, B, C, D, or E. Look out for that. They have changed that on a lot of exams. They've taken it down to 4 possible answer choices. It shouldn't really matter. You should know the correct answer anyway, but just keep a lookout for that. They might drop that down in future years. This is being made in 2020, which brings me to my other point that if you're taking this exam in 2020, you're going to need to check out another video that'll be out soon about the changes due to COVID-19, because 2020 is going to be pretty much completely different from most normal years. But for the most part, this information is going to be relevant. As of now, it's still 5 answer choices, but be on the lookout. They might drop that down to 4. We've seen them do that before. With free response, 6 FRQs, 5 of them are short, 1 of them is longer. We'll get to that in the next slide. And again, you've got an hour and 30 minutes. The free response is in 2 sections, Part A and Part B. Part A is 5 questions. These are your standard, straightforward questions focusing on one area from the curriculum. They're going to be the ones that you're commonly practicing if you're doing practice in school, in your course, or online on your own. It's probably going to be these questions. It's suggested that you spend 65 minutes on Part A, which is 13 minutes per question. That's suggested. They're going to give you the whole free response. You have an hour and 30 minutes to do all of it. You can divide the time how you want. I would stick to that. I would err on rather safe than sorry. You want to move on. The investigative task question, which is Part B, is worth a lot of points. You don't want to miss that. So for Part B, it's obviously, as I just said, the investigative task question. It's the most in-depth question, and it's going to have you combine different areas of the statistics curriculum into one example. So it's going to require multiple skills in order to complete all the parts of the question. This one's going to be a lot longer. Questions from Part A are going to be mostly, 3 parts, maybe A, B, and C. The ITQ can be A, B, C, D, E, F, and they're all different skills. So you got to have a complete mastery of all of the subject matter to do best on this question. To answer the free response questions best, you want to divide it into 3 parts, and this is what they're looking for you to do when you get the question. First, analyzing the question, getting it right. What are they asking for? Why do you need that information? What does it show? Next, they're looking for you to be able to do the calculations do them right, set up the problem correctly, know what you're supposed to do with that situation. And then finally, the third part is they're looking for you to get it right. They're looking for you to give them the right answer. It's important on the free response that you do all three of these things. And they're looking for all three. They're looking for your ability to analyze the question as well as get the correct answer, as opposed to with multiple choice where it's just getting the correct answer. Okay, so with calculators, you were probably told when you started Algebra 1 to get a graphing calculator, get a TI-83 or a TI-84 or one of the newer TI-84s. Just get one and it's all going to be fine. And that was true for Algebra 1. For statistics, you're really going to want one of the newer calculators. The big difference is that there are functions you're going to be using the calculator for that are going to require you, if you're on a TI-83, to memorize the correct order of the data that you're putting in. So you're going to have to put in a number, comma, another number, comma, another number, and then end the parentheses and press enter. As opposed to on the newer calculators, the TI-84, where it's going to give you a full setup and it's going to say put this number here, put that number there, and then you press enter. So if you're buying a new calculator now, definitely spring for one of the 84s, one of the new ones. The ones with color are great, particularly for graphing. That's going to be less important in this class. It's more important in things like calculus, where you might want that different color coordination so that you can keep track of which function is which function. Not as important in statistics. Also beware, the newer ones are rechargeable. Some people like that. Personally, I kind of like the batteries. I don't like having to worry about is my calculator charged when I'm taking the exam, but if that works better for you, feel free to get one of the new ones. The new ones are going to be the best ones in terms of the layout and the way that the calculator works, inputting functions, etc. If you have an 83, that's fine. You can do the course. Just know it's going to be harder because you're going to have to memorize the correct order of the data to do certain functions, which is going to be kind of a pain, but you can still pull it off. Okay, supplies for the exam. Pencils. Notice how there's an S. That means multiple. You should be bringing multiple pencils. Every year, there's someone taking their exam, their pencil breaks, and they have to ask their proctor for another pencil. It wastes time. The proctors think you're unprepared. Quite frankly, you are unprepared. You only brought one pencil. You should be bringing multiple pencils. The calculator. Bring your own calculator. Oftentimes, they will have other ones for you to use if you don't bring your own. The school will. Also, you can take the exam without a calculator. You're going to be at a huge disadvantage. With calculators also, you want to watch out. If the school is providing you a calculator, it could be a TI-83. If you're used to the TI-84 and you don't know the correct way to enter data, which I talked about a little bit in the last slide, that could be a problem for you. Bring your own calculator, make sure it's fully charged or has new batteries, depending on the model, and just make sure you bring your own. Water, always a good idea. You want to stay hydrated. You do not want to be thirsty in the middle of this exam, waiting for the section to end so you can go and get a drink. Just bring your own water. A good night's sleep. You need to sleep. I am astounded by these students who think that they can stay up all night preparing for the exam and then do well. This exam is not memorization. It's going to be taking skills which you are supposed to be taught in the course and then have you demonstrate that you understand and know how to use those skills. It's not going to ask you for something where you can memorize it and then go ahead and do it. You need to have a good night's sleep so that you can think right and answer the questions the way they want them to be answered. If you think that you can just stay up all night cramming and then still have the mental energy to do well on this exam, you're going to end up with a bad score. Get a good night's sleep. If you're really, the difference between a score for you is going to be whether or not you stay up the night before cramming, you're going to get a bad score. So just get a good night's sleep. Next up, a watch. I've had exams where the clock was upside down. I've had them where I couldn't see the clock. I've had them where the proctors just forgot to put up a clock. You should have your own watch. You should be keeping track of time. Just make sure there's no calculator on the watch. They'll ding you for that. Yeah, bring your own watch. That's an important one. Identification. You're supposed to be ID'd when you take the exam. I think usually your student ID works, as well as an ID from the government. The recommendation online that I've seen some places has said social security number, bring that as well. I wouldn't, unless you've got it memorized. Like, don't bring your social security card. It's not that important, and you don't want to lose that. So I'd bring a student ID, and then I'd also bring, if you have one, a driver's license or something like that, just so you're covered. A snack. I personally don't bring snacks to my exams. I find that eating throws me off. It makes me more comfortable and not in the zone taking the test. For a lot of people, though, snacks work really well. People get stressed. Snacking can help them out with that, help them focus on the exam. You don't want to be hungry during the exam, especially if that's going to distract you. So whatever works for you. Again, personally, I wouldn't bring a snack. If it works for you, bring a snack. Finally, what you're going to want is comfortable clothing. T-shirt, and then a sweatshirt, and then maybe some sort of sweatpants or shorts, depending on your testing environment and the time of year. I'm going to tell you a story. When I took was either the SAT or the SAT subject tests, I took it in the summer in a school that had not been in use over the summer. So they turned the air conditioning on the morning of the testing, and the air conditioning blew out because it wasn't prepared, it wasn't turned up enough or whatever. And so we had to take our exam in 100-degree weather, and it was steaming hot in the room. No one could leave. The door had to be shut so that there weren't any distractions. It was horrible. So you've got to be prepared for the testing environment to be brutal. That means bringing comfortable clothes. That means doing what you need to do in order to stay comfortable during the exam. Okay, some good resources for reviewing. Princeton Review, I think, is great. When I was taking these exams, I would always buy a Princeton Review book. The premium editions sometimes can be worth it, sometimes they're not. It's usually just more tests. If you need more tests, cool. If you don't, feel free to get the original. Usually they're not that much more expensive to get the premium. One of the other things I like about Princeton Review is there's a lot of information, a lot of good material, and it's only like $15, $20. So usually it's a good thing to spring for. Barron's is okay. I have used Barron's books as well as Princeton Review books. My issue with Barron's is that oftentimes there are typos, which to me just makes me doubt the information. I don't like that. I don't like that there are typos. Princeton Review seems more polished. I also like their organization better. If you like Barron's better, feel free to go for the Barron's. Another great resource is going to be Khan Academy. It's classic. Everybody knows Khan Academy when they're taking these things. It's always correct. That's the big advantage. There's never anything wrong with it. The information is always good. I have found that it's not always that helpful, for being honest. Sometimes he doesn't really explain the concept all that well, and then we'll do a practice problem that oftentimes isn't relevant to the problem that you have and doesn't really help you. And then I also think it's just super boring, and there's nothing worse than having to watch this guy struggle to write with his mouse on that black backboard. It's just, I don't like it that much. It's part of the reason why I'm doing this now online. But it is a classic. It's always right. And so it's a trustworthy resource. It's definitely something that you should be checking out, even if you're not using it very much. Finally, your teacher. Your teacher should know what they're talking about. If you're here, maybe it's because they don't. But for the most part, your teacher is going to know what they're talking about. They're a good resource. Originally, this was bad resources. Changed it to not good resources because I think that's more accurate. So your friends can be a great resource, or they can be a horrible resource. It really just depends. The important thing with your friends is understanding that they are also students. Even if they've taken the class before or finished it, they're still just students. So they are prone to mistakes that some of the other resources might not make. And so it's just important to remember that your friends can be wrong about stuff, as opposed to your teacher who for the most part is going to be right, and some of the online resources which again are going to be mostly correct. Sort of in the same vein are forums. I've had great experiences on forums with math problems. I've had horrible ones where people give me ridiculous answers that just aren't right, and that unfortunately aren't jokes, the kind of things that you wish were jokes but they're not. People are just so wrong, they have no idea what they're talking about. Your source could be a graduate student in your field. It could be some idiot who's way overconfident and thinks they can answer your question when they absolutely can't. You really just don't know with forums, so I would avoid making a post and waiting for a response on forums. I don't think it's great. I think there are better uses of your time, and I think that the information you can get from other sources is often going to be more trustworthy. Finally, your parents. They're probably great. It's been a while since they were students, and they probably don't know the subject material that much. Subject material also changes, so they're just on the whole not going to be a great resource, especially as we're getting into some of these AP courses where they're going to be a lot of more advanced information. They're just not going to be who you're going to want to go for when looking for help with this stuff. So I would avoid parents. Finally, we'll go over the scoring. This exam, the plurality of students get a 3, which is passing. That's fine, but obviously we're aiming for 5s. You see about 14.5% of students get 5s. That's relatively low for an AP exam. 18% of students get 4s, and then you can see obviously that about 20% get 2s and 1s respectively. So this is one of the more difficult exams, especially in terms of the curving, in that they're not going to be giving out a lot of 5s. With other exams, such as AP Chinese is obviously the big one, but even Calculus BC, you're going to see a larger percentage of the students get 5s. With this exam, there's going to be a lot of 4s and a lot of 3s. But the 5s are still doable, and that's definitely what we're aiming for. The composite score, I got this from a website online that is not the College Board, so take this with a grain of salt. However, I think that they're generally accurate. The composite score is accounting for the weighting of all of this. So generally what that means is multiple choice questions are worth 1 point, and the free response questions are worth 2 point some points per point that the free response question is. So if there's 5 points of the free response question, it's really worth like 10 points in the weighting system. You get the idea. So take these with a grain of salt. There are calculators online that can, where you can input this and mess around with it. Check those out if you want. But I think that this is generally going to be true. You're going to need a composite score of about a 63 out of 100 to get a 5. So you'll know that that's relatively low for an exam to earn the highest score. Obviously, with an A, with most of the tests that you guys are taking in school, it's 90% is the cutoff. This is a 63%. So what that shows you is that if there's a question that you maybe don't know the answer to, it's not a huge deal. They're expecting you to get things wrong. These are difficult exams. And so you can get about a 63 out of 100 to still get a 5, is the idea. In implementation, that's not exactly right, but this gives you a sense, right? And then you can continue on with the 4 being 49 out of 100 and so on and so on. For a 1, if you just sit down and take it, you've earned a 1, but the 1 is useless. Really, anything under I would say anything under a 4 is useless. A 3, sometimes you can get credit for, but we're aiming for 5s, obviously. Alright, well that concludes this. Good luck. Please check out my other videos. Like, subscribe, share, you know the drill. Good luck on your exam. I hope you do great. I hope that this video and some of my other videos help. Yeah, see you all in the next video.